Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Acing the Interview, Essential Tips for Alumni in Today's Job Market. I'm Greg Berry, Director of Communications in the Office of Alumni Affairs. As is the case in any virtual setting, please excuse issues that may pop up. If you have problems with your video or audio, click reconnect or refresh your screen to get back to the presentation right away. A quick question to start. We just want to know where you currently are in the interviewing process. Are you starting to look for jobs, preparing for upcoming interviews, actively interviewing, waiting for feedback after interviewing, or none of the above? If it's none of the above, go ahead and drop it in the chat. We'll keep the poll up for a bit so you can select the answer that best reflects you and your current situation. For our live attendees today, the webinar is being recorded. Once it's been uploaded on our website, you'll get an email with the replay link. We're pleased to have a couple of members from the Collat School of Business Career Center with us. Rita Stewart-Hampton is Director of Collat stumbling all over everything. Rita Stewart-Hampton is Director of Collat's Career Center and has been at UAB since 2010. Previously, she worked at Kellogg's, where she managed a team in the Southeast. She has an undergraduate degree in marketing from Jack State and an MBA from North Alabama. Andreia Stechmann is Assistant Director of Employer Engagement in the Collat Career Center. Before coming to UAB in 2019, she worked for Alacare Home Health and Hospice, Staff Source, and Southeastern Technology Consultants. She got her bachelor's degree in business administration in 2011, an MBA in 2012, and we're not going to hold this against her. It's from Southern Miss. Now, before tossing it over to our guests, I'm going to go ahead and stop the poll so we can kind of show you where we're at. It looks like about 33%, 31% are just starting to look for jobs. 13% are preparing for upcoming interviews, and 6% each for actively interviewing and waiting for feedback after interviewing. 41% maybe just about to start that job process because they picked none of the above. Now, a quick question as we begin as a follow-up. Which type of interview question is the hardest for you to answer? Four answers rather. Behavioral, technical, situational, or personal. I'll keep that up as we formally welcome Rita and Andreia. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Greg, for having us again. We were invited back, so that's good. And I want to thank everybody else for joining us today. We know you could be anywhere else on your lunch break, so we're excited that you decided to spend a couple of minutes with us. On last week, if you were able to join us, we talked about resumes and how to get your resumes through the ATS system or the applicant tracking system. So now that we've gotten your resume through the applicant tracking system, now it's time to ace that interview. So whether you're looking to re-enter the workforce, pivoting your career, or just going for your next role, we hope these tips that we go over today will help you stand out. So the interviewing landscape has changed some, so we're going to walk through that and just talk about some things that are going on. And hopefully today you will understand these tips, and that will help you on your career journey and help you prepare by using the STAR method. And that is a method that we teach in our office, and we're going to go over the STAR method and how that works today. All right. The interview landscape. I started, as Greg said, at UAB in 2010, and boy, have things changed. Things have changed so much. We used to have a lot of companies coming on campus and interviewing, and that was their first touch point with some of our students. Now, the first touch point is probably a phone call or a Zoom meeting before you actually meet that person, in person. So it's, the rise of the virtual interviews. 80% of companies use some form of virtual technology now. So we want to talk about that today as well. And what we have found with our employers that we talk to is there's a greater emphasis on soft skills, on leadership skills, adaptability, critical thinking skills, communication skills. They can teach you Oracle or they can send you to a class on Excel, but it's really those soft skills that employers are telling us that are lacking and that we need to make sure that we are reinforcing here at UAB as we're talking to our students and some of our young alums. We use AI in the interview process. So do many of the companies. As I mentioned, a lot of times before you even talk to the hiring manager, you go through a lot of AI tools to screen, whether it's an interview simulation or just screening candidates. On average, 118 candidates apply for one single job, and only 20% get the interview. So our tips today is that we're going to remain adaptable, and we're going to coach you guys on how to be prepared for the new interview landscape. All right, preparation is key. One of the things that we teach is research. Not only research the company, but research the role that you're applying for. And also, if you can get the names of the people that you're going to be interviewing with, you can research those people as well. Because most people now have a LinkedIn where you can go on and research them to see, their career journey and that type of thing. When we say research the company, we want you to know, what the parent company is. We want to know any companies that are under that parent company. We want to know how many employees work there. We want to know their locations. Are they just in the Southeast? Are they, all over the nation? We want to know what they do. You don't want to walk into an interview and not know exactly what that company does and what they're passionate about. So preparation is key. Knowing your resume inside and out, that is so big that you should know your story. You should know the things that you've done on your career journey better than anybody else. So that's one of the things we coach students as well. Also, be prepared to address the employment gaps. And I think since COVID, the employer gaps are almost now kind of acceptable. They understand, the things that happen, especially after COVID and different things like that. And as long as you can explain those employment gaps, I think you'll be absolutely fine. I know many of us are taking care of younger siblings. Some of us are taking care of aging parents. And, so there may be some gaps in your employment. And as long as you can explain those, you'll be fine. But know your story, know your elevator pitch better than anyone. The last tip I want to talk about is the STAR method. And hopefully you guys have heard of the STAR method before, but we're going to talk through that before, whether your interview is one of those case studies. Most interviews are probably going to be that behavioral type style interview. We want to go over what we coach in helping you ace that interview so you're just not rambling all over the place in your interview. So practice out loud your interview because it is a conversation. I tell students all the time, they're trying to get to know you, but you're also trying to get to know them. So it's a conversation between you and the employer. So let's talk about this STAR technique. And it usually focuses on what you've done in the past to predict how you're going to perform in the future. That's all it is. So a lot of times it starts with, tell me a time when you've done this particular, event. So look at the S. The S is for situation. So think about it as setting the stage. You're setting the stage and almost like painting a picture for that person that's interviewing you. Describe the setting, who you're working with. That's what you want to do in the S part of the STAR. The next letter is T. T stands for task. Identify the task at hand. What's the goal? or what's the problem? What's the problem you're trying to solve? And that's what you want to do under the T. A lot of times the S and T are kind of combined together, but still you want to make sure you talk about the task. The next part of the STAR method is the A, and that's the action. Think about it like this: walking them through the steps, the actions that you took on this particular project or whatever you were working on. And then the last part of the STAR is the R. It describes the results. Think about how did the story end? So you're trying to paint a picture of what you've done using the STAR and answering that interview questions. So Andreia.
Yes, thank you. Would you want to practice, Rita? Let's practice
really, but I'll do it.
Well, practicing is good. Practicing is good.
Okay.
So, but I need some help. So what I was going to ask is if all of you could, in front of you, if you have a Post-it or some notes, do me a favor and write out STAR, STAR.
Okay.
And as I almost misspelled star for a second, I filled myself with the R. STAR. And
Okay.
as I'm going to ask Rita questions if we were in an interview. And as Rita walks through her answer, what I want you to do is to be listening in for those different stages. So as she hits the, situation and she describes situation well, give her a check mark on the S. As she talks through and you identify her talking about the task at hand, give her a check mark. And that way you're walking through and see if Rita even hits it all or if she needs some of our help, with perfecting her method, her answer. But Rita, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Okay.
Okay, awesome. So Rita, tell me about a time when you had to tackle a project and you had to gather information from the whole organization and really get their buy-in. Can you walk me through an example?
Okay. Using the STAR technique, right?
Using the STAR technique.
Okay. So recently we've been trying to improve our culture and engagement of our employees at AAA Automotive. To make it a better place to work. Mm-hmm. So I volunteered to collect some data on what people liked about working at AAA and what people didn't like. Because here at AAA, we've got like baby boomers, we've got Gen X, we've got millennials, we've got the whole generation working here. So I decided instead of sending out a survey over email to ask these questions, I decided to just go and visit each department and interview everyone in the department. So it gave me a chance to meet new people and also to see what everybody did every day. So as I collected all the data, I put it in an Excel like spreadsheet, and I realized that many of the people working at AAA, they just didn't know each other, and they didn't know what everybody did every day. And what I found out, there were so many talented people that worked at AAA, not just in the work that they do, but like they had really cool hobbies. So I decided to put like a mixer together to get everybody together so they could get to know each other. And I even decided to put like a talent portion to the mixer so that other coworkers could learn about each other. So I learned that we had a coworker that played guitar. I learned we had a coworker that like wrote songs, and I even learned that a team member like had speed memorization, like they could memorize a deck of cards in 1 minute. So I thought that was pretty cool. So the results is, we're trying to improve our, culture, but I feel that people will now get to know each other better now that they could, were able to meet each other and talk. So if there's a problem in their department, they'll be able to go to you, Andreia, and kind of, talk through the problem. And before they didn't know you, so they may not have felt as comfortable. So I felt like it was a good thing. That was my result.
That sounds like a great way to reduce some barriers for connection. So that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing.
Yes. Okay, great. So basically the STAR method, I would say just have some examples written out of things that you have done, and have 4 or 5 examples and have them maybe written out in the STAR technique so that you will be able to pull from those examples if you're asked a question. I just want to ask everybody on board, did I hit every letter? Did I hit the STAR? Yes or no? Tell me in the chat.
Tell us in the chat.
Did I hit them?
I know from what I could tell, I was hitting the check marks, and I think
okay. Okay. Good.
So Ed agrees.
Right. Okay.
I see a couple yeses, so good job, Rita.
Okay. Good.
Yay.
Okay.
Yeah, good job.
All right. Well, I'm going to toss it to you, Andreia, so you can talk more about the next topic that we're going to talk about.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rita. Thanks for walking us through STAR. I want to kind of start off just, if you will, really talking about the different types of interviews. It used to be really simple, right? Like once upon a time, you should just get called in for an interview. You would sit down with the people that are, actually going to be hiring for your position. Maybe have a phone screen before then, but there's been a lot of more, because of technology, a lot more kind of steps that a lot of employers are taking. So just kind of walking through some of these types of interviews, it's important for us to know, really what kind of section, what kind of structure those interviews will have before you head in. So you better know how to prepare. I saw that, preparing for interviews and kind of what to expect ahead of time was one of the topics too. So first and foremost, phone screens, like Rita mentioned, this used to be, honestly, a lot of times kind of a full interview. These phone screens are turning into really kind of short, quick check-ins, if you will, really to assess your interest in the position. Often these are the very first round. So employers may quickly, give you a ring, sometimes unexpected, and just to gather see if you're still interested in the position and really just quickly assess those kind of main, qualifications, if you will, for the position, if your background matches up. Virtual interviews, like Rita was mentioning, it's a huge part of the first round of interviews. Rita mentioned that we used to have all these employers on campus. We have here in the Career Center School of Business, we had three interview rooms that were used by organizations constantly for on-campus interviews. They were here to see one-on-one, in person. That's just not been the case anymore. Companies don't come on campus anymore. That first round of interviews is hosted virtually on Teams, on Zoom. And those rooms are actually now being used by students, so they can have a safe space to do their types of interviews. Virtual interviews are very similar to the one-on-ones, traditional interviews, but they do come with their own set of kind of best practices and tips that I'll cover with you here in a minute. They want to make sure that it's different, right, from an in-person. There's a lot more things to consider in order to really be able to maximize that interview and nail it, really. In-person interviews usually can be one-on-one or can have a panel interview. Panel interviews are a little trickier. You want to make sure that you are ahead of time, know who's in the room. You may be talking to people from different departments, different levels of the organization. So you may have somebody who's going to be in that role, a coworker, your manager in that role, even the CEO. So it's really interesting to kind of know from a panel perspective who's interviewing to the different people that are going to be listening in. Of course, one-on-one, sometimes employers will do one-on-one interviews and you'll have back-to-back. So you'll have one interview here, 30 minutes here, 30 minutes here, 30 minutes here. So again, knowing the composition and the time that you're going to spend with each person and who you're meeting with, really important as you prepare, because you may even be using the same example for STAR, but you may be highlighting different areas of that, different parts of that experience, depending on who you're talking to. One thing that's been, that used to just really be initially adopted by huge organizations, is now becoming more and more commonplace, and that's AI-powered interview platforms like Big Interview and HireView. Those are platforms that AI is utilized to assess things like your eye contact. Oftentimes they're recorded interviews, so that employer will set up ahead of time what questions they want you to answer, and that platform will ask you the questions, so those simulated interviews, and that video will calculate your lighting, your eye contact, your hand movements. I'm a hand talker. I would have to really practice before I did a HireView interview. But it counts for your tone of your voice, how quickly you talk. So those are, again, types of interviews that are just very different, and it provides a lot of feedback, and they are usually done really to kind of weed out that first round of interviewees. And then depending on your background, especially if you're in consulting, tech, case interviews and technical interview rounds are very common. They usually will, have you practice, and they really look for how you are solving, problems on your feet, how you're thinking quickly, usually seeing how you can use a technical skill set as well. So a big tip from us here is to ask the format of the interview if it's not communicated. Oftentimes they will tell you that as you're scheduling that interview, but if it's not, told to you, I could not recommend more. It's often just an oversight, and I encourage you to reach out and ask a little more about who you're meeting with and the format of the interview ahead of time as well. So I mentioned to you the virtual interviews, even if it's one-on-one, it's very similar to the in-person interviews. It does come with its own set of challenges and kind of extra awareness that you have to have when it comes to your preparation. The first thing is really to find a space that is quiet, no interruptions. And I'm sure you've all at some point saw throughout, this was right around COVID, a dad that was doing an interview to BBC, and the kid came crawling up, the mom came and pulled the kid out of the room. So minimize, of course, those interruptions, making sure that we have a space that is not distracting, to you or to that employer as well, because it will catch your attention at the very least. If you have somebody next door, practice the piano, is going to distract you and that employer as well that's interviewing you. Lighting is important, making sure that you kind of uplit, that you have a well lit room, that your background's tidy and clean and neat, and I always say the minimal in the background, the better. Even if it's just a white wall behind you, we tell students and professionals alike, if your bed has to be in the background, make sure your bed is made. We've had a lot of feedback from employers, and that is a big one. That candidate can be answering all the right questions, have all the background, background experience that's needed for that role. But if they're seeing the laundry basket in the corner, that's a no-go, because it's telling them a lot about how you prepared and how you're taking that interview seriously or not. Eye contact as well, making sure that you have that camera angle and that this is your way to connect with that person virtually. So making sure you have that eye contact is really important, and that camera is at eye level, to ensure that you're able to stay focused and stay connected as well. It's really tough when somebody's like from a bad angle, not just do you not look great, but also, it's just not a very professional look. We always recommend for virtual interviews, dress professionally head to toe, not just as to let you get in that mindset of, you're in a professional interview, dressing for the job. But you never know. You may have to, get up to turn on the lights to, there's too dim in the room. And you might be all dressed, and then the bottom you have athletic shorts. And now everybody knows that again, just not a great look. So dress professionally for these interviews, whether, you're doing them in your home or out in the space. And test your tech early. Everything from your internet, Zoom and Teams, make sure you have the most updated version, that it's downloaded, especially Teams. I know it takes a long time to download. So if you don't have Microsoft Teams in your desktop when you're doing it, make sure it's downloaded ahead of time and not, logging in 10 minutes before. If your computer is anything like my computer, it will choose that moment to do a 30-minute update. So just make sure all of that's done ahead of time, as well as your mic, that your mic is working. Technology tends to stop working when you most need it sometimes. So just making sure all those things ahead of time, that you're ready to go, is really important. One great thing about virtual interviews, that you can keep your notes nearby. So, it is lovely to have, I will show you, I have a couple notes here just between me and you. And it's helpful, right? That's one of the benefits of doing a virtual interview. If you need something to quickly look over and remind yourself of a point you wanted to make in that interview, feel free to do that. Just, refrain from reading off of it and not having a natural flow of that conversation. Because again, it is a conversation, right? So whether you are talking to that person in person or virtually, it is important to make sure you're making that connection. For in-person interviews as well, dress the part, depending on the industry that you're in. hear all the time from, from employers and from, we have an employer that's coming here on site tomorrow. And she was asking, she's like, Andreia, what's the attire for this event? And she's like, we're really casual here at DAXCO. And I said, whatever you'd wear for what you wear for a career fair. So, I know she came to represent her company. She was in kind of dress pants and a company polo. I said, perfect. That's fantastic. Our advice is always to dress one step above, right? So if it's a professional environment, business professional. If it's really a casual environment, then you can do business casual for that position when you're interviewing. Always want to put the best foot forward. Remember, first impressions are huge and they matter. And the last thing you want is for, you to be noticed by something other than what you're bringing to the table, right? So don't want to make those self-judgments. Again, eye contact, huge. Having a firm handshake shows confidence and assurance, and that you are taking this serious as well. And then body language. Again, your posture is really important. How you're sitting in the chair. That if I'm over here and I'm doing this presentation like this, it's a whole different tone that I'm setting for the presentation for you. So definitely things that you need to make, assess how you're doing. Again, I'm a hand talker. So I have this little, thing that I share with students as well. I always got the advice of doing this. And to me, this just creates so much tension. So I just interlock my bottom two and I just make sure I find a comfortable spot. And that way it kind of stops me. So find what makes sense for you to feel comfortable, to still talk naturally and be able to still, connect and not feel super restricted. But again, making sure being awareness is important when it comes to body language. Bring copies of your resume. It's still important, even if they already have it. It just shows that you're prepared. It's a small little detail, making sure that you bring that just in case somebody else jumps on the interview and you have that resume ready. It just shows having resumes in the portfolio as well. We share that with students all the time. For career fairs here, we have them available for our students to check out during that time that they're at the career fair. It's important to make that impression that you are professional, that you are prepared. And we always say arrive 10 minutes early. Don't arrive 30 minutes early because that person is probably still in the previous interview or in the middle of a meeting. So it does set things off when you're a little too early, but you don't want to be right on time and run things behind. Let's say you have to, check in and all these different things, then you're already late for your interview. So 10 minutes give you a buffer. And remember that interview starts the moment you drive into the lot. You never know who you're parking next to. You are on the moment you are driving into that parking lot. Be mindful of music, be mindful of who you, be friendly to everyone you are in connection with as you are approaching your interview. Who are you riding in the elevator? Might be who you're interviewing with, might be, that front desk person, and will have a lot of weight as well. I know we always ask here, Rita, when we are interviewing, how that person interacts with our front desk. So it's really important, especially when your companies are looking at a culture fit and who they're bringing in these, tight-knit teams. For that specific reason. Panel interviews, like I said, is important to kind of be mindful of everyone in the room, making sure that you're nodding, acknowledging everyone that's in the room as you're, making eye contact with every panelist as you're answering, even if it's just one person that's primarily running the questions, making sure that you include everyone is really, really important and noticed by employers. So a main tip here is to show genuine interest, and be friendly to people. People want to hire people that want to be there, that are, that people like, that are friendly. Anything, that is off of that can be a really big red flag, because this is supposed to be your best foot forward. You're supposed to be putting your, best self out there. So if it's not great, if you're being rude to the front desk person or, coming in blaring music into the parking lot, it's automatically, that's how you're coming across. So just something to be mindful of that. Rita mentioned to you about the new landscape of, the market now and what employers are looking for. And we are constantly hearing from employers in terms of improvement for both students and our recent graduates is those soft skills. So I want to show you, this is from NACE. This is the National Association of Colleges and Employers. This is Job Outlook for 2025, what they're hearing from employers. And this is attributes that employers seek on a candidate resume. If you see at the top, you have problem-solving skills, ability to work in a team, written communication skills, initiative, strong work ethic, and only then technical skills. communication skills, flexibility, adaptability. So those are things that you can have those buzzwords on your resume, right? The employers are looking for. But when it comes to an interview, you have to have examples. You have to have experience from your past that you can draw upon to showcase those employers how you are meeting those specific needs that they have. Like I say, employers are telling us all the time, they're like, I really see a gap in written communication. Resumes are just sent to me with no, email composed in a text, not appropriate subject lines, and texting me as if we're best friends when we are, this is still a professional relationship. So something to be really mindful. We want you to be thoughtful on how you communicate clearly and with confidence. Again, soft skills and adaptability are winning. And oftentimes when candidates are taken out of the interview stages is often not for technical skills lacking, because they can teach you that, but really for soft skills. That's where, candidates are really missing the mark oftentimes. And then want you to always say ability to learn, adapt to these new technologies like AI, and expressing how you've used that to really highlight your skills is so important nowadays. So something that we want you to be mindful is to start really brainstorming how you have shown these skills and have examples, right, to share in that STAR method, the STAR structure, to allow those employers to really match up what you're doing with what they're looking for this position. One thing that's really important is asking questions for the interviewer. Rita mentioned earlier, it's a two-way street, right? You're having a conversation, but not just are they interviewing you, you are also interviewing them, and you are making sure that's going to be a good fit for you and what you're looking for in the next position or, in a different career set. So having questions to ask the interviewer, don't ever say you don't have questions. There's always something that you can ask that will provide you more insight to the company, the organization, the team, right? This is your time to, ask what matters to you. What is it that you're looking for? So always ask questions. It shows for employers when you don't have any further questions, it just tells them that you're not prepared, not interested really, because again, there's always something you can ask. And it provides an opportunity for them to engage back with you. So the only thing we want to mention is avoid asking about salary and benefits at this time. If they ask you and they open that door, fair, right? And I completely think you should express what your salary max or your range or, what benefits you're looking for. But if it's not approached and opened up that conversation by the employer, it is a big red flag for them. It automatically, regardless of what you said, that employer will be like, they're only interested because of the salary. If the salary's not there, they're not interested in anything else. And it's shown that, employees stay for things beyond salary for those positions. That's how they can retain their employees. So they don't want that to be the only reason why you're staying or going. Some examples wanted to kind of share with you is what the success looked like in this role. That gives that employer the understanding and the impression that you're already thinking, how will I succeed? So you're already putting yourself in that position. What's the team dynamic like? Again, very important. You saw those attributes to look for is working in teams more and more. I dare to say there's not a single position in the world where you are working independently only. You are having to work as part of a team. You are having to collaborate across departments. Even if the work you do is individual, you will have to have that component. So the fact that you're thinking that and you're asking that matters. It's also important to you. It's important to them. And then how does the company support growth, right? This is something that's important to you. This is your time to ask, like, if being a part of an organization that's involved in the community is important to you. If, being a part of an organization that will support you pursuing additional skills, this is your time to ask. If they haven't shared with you that information, this is your time to make sure that company has what you are also looking for. So we always say have 4 to 5 questions prepared. They may, let's say if you have 5 questions and they happen to answer throughout the interview process, 3 out of those, you still have 2 questions to go. So something here to be mindful of. Don't miss out on the end of the interview, little extra cherry on top of you being able to also get your questions answered. Follow up. This is really important. And more and more we keep hearing, a lot of feedback when it comes to employers and our students, the candidates as well, on discrepancy. And oftentimes it's just really hard. And having been on the recruiting side, I understand our recruiters and I think I have that insight. So oftentimes when I share with our students a little bit about what that process is like is really helpful to them, that transparency. So that's what I want to share with you today. Following up is really important. We definitely tell our students and we tell our alumni, send a thank you note and an email within 24 hours. It shows that you're interested. 24 hours is a great kind of rule of thumb to, allow that employer to have finished interviews, and still your email will bring them up and reinforce in that email. We encourage you to express your interest, why you're a good fit for that position. Keep it professional, keep it concise. If there's something about that during that interview that you connected with that interviewer, if you found something that was really interesting to you about the organization, if you enjoyed the office, if you really enjoyed meeting throughout your walkthrough, getting to meet the team, whatever it was that you're able to personalize that follow-up email, 100% I want to encourage you to include it in. So the more customized, the more sincere, really, the better it will stand out. One question we always get from students and from candidates, I know I always got it as well, is, when is it okay to follow back? I haven't heard back. When can I follow up again? Or is it okay for me to follow up 48 hours again? And here's what I'll say based on my experience and what I hear from employers as well. So oftentimes, I always tell our students, put that employer hat on, right? Like, if you were in that role, that position is not the only role that, that recruiter is working on, recruiting for. I know when I was a recruiter for Alacare, I had about 42 to 45 positions on average minimum that I was working on. So I had a lot of interviews I was coordinating, a lot of interview days that I was hosting, and then I was putting on, 2 managers. And my job went all the way. And I was just talking to a recruiter recently that recruits here as well. And, she was saying, she's like, I do everything from campus recruiting. So from coming to events at universities all the way to scheduling drug screens, background checks, first day, parking. So it's a lot. So I ask you to have a little, if you're mindful of not overdoing it and understanding kind of that things just take sometimes a little time. So if you send an email, showing your interest, thanking them for 24 hours, you haven't heard back in a week, send another email, just follow up, just reiterating your interest and just looking, just saying you're looking forward to hearing back from them, that, keeping it again positive. Where things turn south, and I will tell you just from experience, where it really starts to be a red flag versus then an interest is when there's follow up. And it's back to back. And then it gets aggressive and it gets demanding. And on the other side, I want to say, I understand. I've also been on the other end, but I was the one looking for a job for 4 months. And so on my end, it sounds like crickets, right? I'm submitting these applications. I've gone to the interviews. Why am I not hearing back yet? Right? I want to know what I did right, what I did wrong. And I understand from our end, right? It's our focus. So I very much empathize with that as well. I think it's just helpful to understand where both sides come from and where you can, knowing that information, knowing that, your check-in will start reading as insistence. And, and I'll be honest, I've had aggressive ones sometimes and I'm like, oh, this is not good. But all it's telling me, I'm seeing a different side of you than when you're here in an interview. So who you're going to be the first day when you show up at the job, right? So oftentimes our good intentions can also have, if you will, a different view. So, we all just want to say 24 hours that first email and then follow up with a week. Oftentimes those recruiters as well are waiting to hear back from the managers you interviewed with. So they may not have the information yet. So feel free, like I said, check in a week later if you haven't heard back. You can check in one more time. Sometimes, I hate saying unfortunately, and I'm not saying I agree with it or that I love it, but sometimes you won't hear back. And it's unfortunate, very unfortunate. And I wish I had a better insight and kind of tell you, other than just, sometimes you just have to kind of leave it and know that you will, as Rita mentioned, there's plenty of things you can do. This is a starting point. And so Rita will have some pointers for you later that I hope will help with that piece. But I just want to tell you that piece of it, of following up, it's so important. And there's that fine line and, professionalism as well that we encourage you to keep. Rita, will you chat a little bit with them about if they're changing careers and kind of re-entering the workforce? I'm so excited for you to share your background as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Andreia. As Greg mentioned, I worked for a Fortune 500 company for over 15 years. And, life happens. And I actually left the workforce after 15 years of, corporate and training and managing a team to be a stay-at-home mom. Can you imagine going from managing a whole group of team, having goals and projects due constantly, to really managing a household of a newborn infant? And that was a huge career adjustment. But people do it a lot, and people get discouraged during that time because, you still have your same skills that you used in corporate America. Now you're transferring those skills to home life. And then one day you're hoping you can transfer those skills back into the workforce. It's almost like being on the interstate, taking an exit, and then trying to figure out, how do I get back on the interstate? So I will just say that, people understand when you have to adjust. And most definitely during that time, I kept busy. I went back to school, got my MBA while I was off. So I was off, out of the job market at the time. So I was still working on my skills. I took some classes. I would do things on my own to, keep up my Excel skills and things like that. But I also tried to keep up with former coworkers and things like that. I'd, say, hey, you want to meet for lunch or, coffee? And that's really how I got back on the interstate, was really telling people it was time. My son was starting kindergarten, so I was ready to go back. So really using my network, and you will find your network is that really valuable. And telling people, that I'm ready to go, back to work if you know of anything. And that's basically how I got this job back at UAB. Was using my network and doing we didn't talk about informational interviews. And that's what I was doing. I was having coffee, just kind of getting the landscape. What is it like to work at UAB? This is what I'm interested in, and that type of thing. And that's how I ended up getting back onto, the interstates, what I call it. And I've been full speed ahead since then. So and my tip to everyone is, life happens, and you may, like I said, you may have to care for a parent, you may have to care for a younger, a child or whatever, but just don't give up. Just keep pressing forward and using those transferable skills. I was selling Pop-Tarts and cereal for 15 years, representing that brand. Now I represent students to try to get them, into the workforce. So the students are my product now. So I transferred those skills over to what I'm doing now. So I just wanted to kind of give my little background on that and hopefully encourage someone that may be going through that. This is mine, right? Key takeaways. I just mentioned this, using your network, including this amazing alumni community. We thank you so much for being on today. Share your leads, share leads with I think there's some Facebook pages out there for young alumni. Get involved at UAB to help our students. We're always wanting young alumni to, come back and help us with things. But, interviewing is not just having the right answers. It's about that connection and that curiosity and the clarity and being authentically you and speaking from your experiences. It will help you stand out. So those are our tips. And I think our last thing I wanted to say is every interview is a step forward, whether it leads to, a new role or a learning moment, because you're not going to get every job, but you can take what you've learned through the interview process and use it on the next job interview. So just keep pressing forward. Don't give up, and you will land something. You will most definitely land something. Yeah.
This has been fantastic, and you caught me as I was just about to drop our LinkedIn page into the chat for people to take a look at. And I'm going to do that right now as I stumble. We also have a group that our alumni can take advantage of as well. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that slide presentation, and we're going to get to the questions. And we have questions coming in, and I've got a few that I jotted down as well. So we'll just kind of go back and forth a little bit. You mentioned the firm handshake. And that is something that is always discussed. Everybody knows, or should know, they should have a firm handshake, but yet people still do not. How important is it having that firm handshake?
Yeah, that's part of, to me, it's part of your first impression. You know, that firm handshake. We usually say just two shakes, not the fish. You know, a lot of times the people will barely grab your hand, and while you're doing that handshake, very good eye contact. That make that eye contact. A good two firm shakes and introducing yourself. It's so important. It really is.
When it comes to those questions to prepare, how many should you prepare? Because some of the things may come up during the course of the conversation and interview you have. B, how many should you ask? Is there a comfortable number? Is there too many? Is there too few?
We always say 4 to 5 questions to prepare ahead of time. I don't think there's like a number that can say, don't ask more than 10. I think it's important to read the room, right? Like you don't want to be there an extra hour, but like I said, it's important to take that time to answer those questions that are important to you too. It's a two-way interview. So, I believe this too. If there's questions or answers throughout the interview, right? And let's say you have 5 and just so happen everything is covered during that interview, you can always ask that person a little bit about themselves. Like, why do you enjoy working at AAA company? People love to talk about themselves. You will learn a lot about their experience and why they're, enjoy working there. You will also hear if there's any hesitation, it doesn't seem very genuine, then that might be a red flag for you. So I think more important than, how many to ask is what you are asking in those questions. So.
And I would just add to make sure you're not asking things that you can find on the website. You don't want to ask, so how many employees work here? You should be able to find that on the website. You want more in-depth questions of your daily, of your tasks and the projects you're going to be working on.
You guys mentioned dress head to toe, even for an AI and a Zoom interview. Inside baseball, I spent a career previously in TV. As a sports dude, I wore shorts underneath the sports desks from time to time. Why is it important to make sure you're dressed head to toe, even for those virtual settings?
It's more of the mindset. It sets your mind that you're in a professional interview. It just makes me feel good when I'm dressed, I'm prepared, and I'm ready to go. So I think that's just the tip I have. It's just a mindset that you're, as the young people say, you're locked in. You're locked in and ready to go.
And that makes plenty of sense. So you mentioned STAR, do you like the Carl method? It adds what you learned on at the end: circumstance, action, result, and learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've heard of that one as well. Yeah, I've heard the car. I hadn't heard the L, but yeah, that makes sense too. I think as long as you're hitting those different topics, it really doesn't matter how long. I think someone asked in the chat, how long should your interview answer be? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, as long as you are painting that story and answering the questions. And then sometimes, you may even say after you answer, did I answer everything that you wanted to hear? And they may say, well, tell me more about this. And then you can elaborate more. But a lot of times, if you hit that Carl or STAR, then you've given them the information that they need to make a good decision.
And I think it is important to, sorry, Andreia, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Greg. I was just going to say, I wanted to add too, oftentimes they'll throw a question that you just haven't thought of. And so you're, kind of thinking on the spot of an example. I just always, think of that STAR or the Carl, like it just helps you structure your answer. Because a lot of that is, you may be telling the best example, but if you were going, from, letter D to A to back and forth, and it's hard for that person to comprehend it, to follow your story, to understand all the great points you're making. So to me, it's always like, especially if it's, you don't know never thought of an answer for this question, and you kind of have to think on the spot, and you're just, ad-libbing through it. It allows you mentally, if you're used to answering questions that way, it will allow you to structure your answers. So it gives you a much better chance of hitting those points and that person to actually be like, okay, I get what you're saying, instead of being like, oh my gosh, what just happened? What are you saying? And then you find yourself rambling on.
And Rita, you mentioned that there is no appropriate length, short or too long. And I would say almost read the room too,
Right.
Because if you start rambling, you're going to probably start seeing people stare back at you.
Right. Exactly.
You do.
Right. And that's part of that emotional intelligence that we teach, we talk to students about. Yeah, exactly.
When it comes to virtual settings, do you recommend blurring backgrounds or do you recommend virtual backgrounds? How do you recommend what people should have? All three of us right now have what's in our legitimate background tonight.
Right. I think either one.
Yeah.
I think either one works.
Yeah.
I know, sometimes here at UAB, when I do Zooms, we have these virtual backgrounds of the commons because it's so pretty. So I'll put the commons up. But yeah, I think it's personal preference. I think as long as there's nothing too much distracting in the background, I think it's okay. Yeah.
I agree. And testing it out beforehand, that would be my only tip. Sometimes the backgrounds are like my plant would be still showing through it. So just those little technical glitches that can kind of throw you off. But I think the important thing is that there's nothing that's distracting in the background. It looks professional.
Right.
Considering the current climate, would it be acceptable to do the fist bump instead of a handshake?
I don't think so. That I wouldn't recommend. To me, the fist bump is so informal. That it's something I think you do with your friends or something like that. But I don't know, Andrea. That's just my personal.
Yeah, I wouldn't, because you don't know that person's level
Right.
of comfortable anyway. So if it's kind of like color on the resume. Some people might not care, but the people that do, it would be a big red flag for them. So it's better off to leave that off the table and not do the fist bump. I would say.
There are going to be those times where you walk out of an interview and you feel that you bombed. How do you keep your head up at that point?
Yeah, and there's going to be interviews that you're going to bomb. That's just it.
Reality. Yeah.
It's reality.
We're human. We're human.
We're human, and I've had plenty that I have bombed. But I just try to take what I've done and try to build up on it. And typically, what you've done that you bombed, and you like, okay, next time I'm going to be better prepared for this. And it just helps you to build and get better to the one that's for you. That's how I see it. Yeah.
If the interviewer doesn't extend an offer for you to ask questions, if they don't say, hey, got any questions for us? Can you ask the interviewer?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Most definitely.
I think you can navigate that and just say, would you have a minute for me to ask a couple questions? I think that's perfectly acceptable and encouraged even. It might just be they forgot, it might not be intentional. It might just be they forgot or were thinking of time or something. So
Let's see here. How do you go about not getting the future potential employer to not call your references just in case they don't hire you?
Repeat that again.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And I was rereading it too. And S. Will, if there's a better way to go about that, how do you go about not getting the future potential employer to not call your references just in case they did not hire you? Okay, so if they're not going to hire you, how do you encourage them not to call the references if they know from word go, maybe?
I don't think they're going to call.
Usually
they're
they
not
would.
going to hire.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I know from being a recruiter, I had part of our application process. It had where you can say like, what was the wording? Agreed. It was different, but kind of consent to, references being called. But it had a clause for current employer. So we wouldn't call the current employer unless we were extending an offer, but would call previous references if we were in the interview process. But I also had candidates reach out to me and ask me that and just say, would you be okay not, contacting current employer? It's understandable. And I would say 99.99% of the people that are in the recruiting process understand that and wouldn't want to damage your relationship with a current employer either. So it wouldn't be done intentionally.
Right.
I like this question. Somebody dropped this in the chat. What if a student doesn't have the right attire in their closet? Where can they go on campus to take advantage of that? And I know the answer, but I want you guys to share that there is resources out there.
And I'm glad you asked. We have 2 career closets on campus. One's in Hill on the 3rd floor, and you can make an appointment through Handshake for the Hill Student Center, Career Center closet. And I think you get up to 3 pieces of items for free. And then we also have a closet here in the Clark School of Business that you can come in and visit and also get 3 free pieces per year. So we recognize that that we want our students to make that first best impression, and we have made accommodations on campus for that. So yeah.
And I made sure to drop those 2 links, at least the one for the UAB Career Closet in Hill in the chat, and then your page with the Career Center in Colette. Final question, and then we will let you go. For someone who has spent time being self-employed, what would be the best way for them to show they're ready to work as a team and they're ready to be part of that team?
I'll give my thoughts, Andreia, and you go.
Yeah,
I would
please.
say the same way that you would do if you were working for UAB. You're going to put your projects down, things that you did, and outline those projects and be able to talk about those projects in an interview, and just outline them like I would do that. Andreia and I work for UAB, and we work in the Clark School of Business, and then we work inside the Career Center. So it's sometimes it's like having your own little business, because you have goals you've got to meet in your department, in your school. So I would play it out the same way if I was self-employed.
And I did fib a little bit. 2 people put in the same question, so I want to dump this in, and it's about the Career Closet. Do you take donations? How can they donate to those closets?
Right. So last week we did a huge donation drive. In fact, we got 110 boxes of clothes during the drive. Okay. So we will put up in different times of the year when we get low on things. Right now, our closet is pretty full, but we will put out on our Instagram. I think our last page, I don't know if you still have to put that up, Greg, is our Instagram page. We will put out when we're taking donations, when we're running low. We replenished last week, but you can always reach out to me if you there it is. If everyone can follow us, it's all things career in the Clark School of Business. But you can also reach out to me and send me an email, and then we can make accommodations. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I'll go ahead and keep this up. Andreia, thanks for tossing that in the chat. We'll keep this QR code up just for a moment so people can go ahead and take their phone out, do whatever they need to do to get that. And I'm just going to slowly ad lib into our closing so people have time to do that. Rita and Andreia, it's been spectacular having you today, having Tristan last week. You guys have provided fantastic information for our audience. So it's been a very, very invaluable experience. And thank you so much for being part of our webinar series.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
You are so welcome. And for today's live audience, just a reminder that this session was recorded. We'll email a replay link to you once it's been uploaded onto our YouTube channel. Meanwhile, I'd like to invite you to come back for these upcoming webinars. On May 20th, we'll welcome Dr. Sophia Bees for The Science of Sugar, Sweet Secrets Uncovered. On June 5th, join us for Recognizing and Avoiding Fraud Schemes in 2025 with Ryan Schobel. On July 15th, Sharon Spaulding will be here for Moving Towards Plant-Based Milk. Are they healthier? And on August 7th, come back for The Signals We Send, Rethinking Leadership in an Age of Noise with Dr. Parker Woodruff. Register for these and more at alumni.uab.edu/events. Finally, we'd like to know how we're doing. What did you think about today's presentation? What would you like to see in the future? This QR code is going to take you to a short survey where you can give us feedback. Once again, thanks so much for joining us. And as always, go Blazers.
Blazers.
Oh, Blazers.